An autopsy confirms the remains found in a Wyoming campground are that of Gabby Petito's.
The manner of death has been ruled a homicide.
The search for Brian Laundrie has become more urgent than ever.
Thousands of Haitian migrants are reportedly being released into the United States.
This is a man-made disaster made by Joe Biden.
We will get it under control.
Let me give you a place to start, Mr. President. Come to the Rio Grande Valley.
Politico reporter confirming the authenticity of Hunter Biden's emails.
Politico figured out what we knew a year ago. Reporters around this town knew that. That's what so offends me and so many Americans.
De Blasio issued a warning to Brazil's president, Jair Bolsonaro.
If you don't want to be vaccinated, don't bother coming.
It shows a lot how left-wing people are. They want to control everything.
9 years old, Clyde Bridger, a Vietnam War veteran, returning to the cockpit after 65 years.
I feel like a teenager all over again.
Our studio, and we're seeing a variety of different shots today because little by little we're getting our staff back and we're allowed to dust off our equipment and use all the contraptions that we've left in the closet for the last 2 years.
That's right. And Dave, who's running the camera right now, not wearing a spacesuit, unlike about a year ago.
That's it.
It's all good.
Absolutely.
Now let's see if Dave remembers how we're. By the way, Rachel's in today for Ainsley.
Welcome.
Let's see if Dave remembers that he's got to stay there while we read.
Right,
this.
because the teleprompter's right there, and if Dave walks away, we're stuck with nothing to say.
We always, you know what? We always have something to say.
Right.
It goes.
Even if it doesn't make any sense.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining us on this very busy Wednesday. We start this hour with a Fox News alert. And as it turns out, that body we were talking about yesterday, discovered at a Wyoming campsite, has been positively identified as Gabby Petito, and the coroner has ruled her death a homicide. But her boyfriend and person of interest, Brian Laundrie, is still missing. We don't know where he is. Carly Shimkus is live in Venice, Florida, as police investigate a new lead into his current location. And Carly, you know, we've done a lot of missing people stories before, but with social media and TikTok and all these YouTubers out there, we've never seen so many tips come in where there's video of these people.
Thousands and thousands of tips, Steve. You're absolutely right. You can see the sun is coming up. There's at least one police car behind me, likely for the large media presence here at the Carlton Reserve. But you're right. The FBI confirmed yesterday that the body found at Grand Teton National Park on Sunday is that of Gabby Petito. The manner of death was ruled a homicide. The specific cause of death remains pending a final autopsy result. But Brian Laundrie, her boyfriend, remains the only person of interest. And yesterday, the search resumed for him right here at the Carlton Reserve. 60 officers from 8 different agencies used ATVs, drones, and canines to tackle the relentless conditions.
Terrain's very difficult. Essentially, 75% of it's underwater, and other areas that are dry we're trying to clear.
And 500 miles away, deputies in the Florida Panhandle investigated a possible Laundrie sighting. A resident posted this image taken on his trail cam. The Oskaloosa County Sheriff's Office says they conducted an extensive search, but no one and nothing of note was located. Meanwhile, a neighbor says Brian acted totally normal when he came home without Gabby, telling Fox News he mowed the lawn. He and his mother went for a bicycle ride around the block. Everything was just normal life once he came back. We're also learning about a camper who claims to have led the FBI to Petito's body.
So I saw Brian Laundrie parking his van August 26th at Spread Creek. So I'd already reported to the FBI what I had seen, and I wasn't 100% sure, but now that there's dash cam footage of the van where I saw it, I'm 100% certain it was just him. There was no Gabby.
Yeah, and she says that when she told the FBI about it, an agent thanked her for tipping them off to the right location. Back here at the Carlton Reserve, police said that they are going to be resuming their search for Brian Laundrie later today.
Thank you, Carly.
Yeah. Those TikTok users are both a blessing and a curse. You know, you get thousands of tips in, but also some of them aren't real, and so then it's a challenge for the investigators to sift through that. But indeed, with TikTok, and I think this real trend with young women really into true crime stories, this has really made this a very unique investigation. And as you see, we're seeing video footage of people seeing images of him and reporting through TikTok what they're seeing.
And so many travel bloggers, so many people are taking pictures of everything, and that's how we were able to see her van right there by the trail, which is exactly where they found her body just on Sunday after a tip from a TikToker.
Meanwhile, 5 minutes after the hour, President Biden promising to get the escalating situation at the border under control. We heard him muddle something through his mask as thousands of migrants continue to pour over the border.
Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security confirming Haitian migrants on a deportation flight when it landed in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, injured 3 ICE officers and a pilot, while migrants in Texas essentially overtook a bus and fled before they were captured by the police.
And Fox and Friends Enterprise reporter Lawrence Jones joins us live from Del Rio, Texas, along with Texas Department of Public Safety Lieutenant Chris Olivares. Lawrence?
Hey, good morning, family. Last hour, we were doing a hit, and you guys couldn't see it, but right behind us, there was actually migrants crossing the Rio Grande. We actually got some of that footage I want to show you guys and bring LT in. LT, we've been here for a couple days now, and I keep telling the folks that the deterrence mechanism here is the Texas State Troopers right here. Border Patrol are handling the processing. Talk a little bit about that and what we just saw here seconds ago.
Well, you're right on point, Lawrence. So we've been doing this ever since the start of this year because of the surge of migrants that were coming across the southern border. Just to put it in perspective, our DPS personnel have come into contact with over 68,000 migrants. Wow. That's out of our normal scope as a state police agency. But you're seeing record numbers day in and day out, not just in Del Rio, but also in the Rio Grande Valley and also along the southern border. So that's what we're doing right now. We're surging the border with our DPS resources, also with the Texas Military Department, to help our federal partners because we know they're stretched thin, they're overwhelmed. So our goal is to combat this human trafficking, drug smuggling, and also the surge of illegal immigrants that are coming across our southern border.
Talk about, we had a rancher on yesterday, the governor's orders with Lone Star to help these Texas landowners that have migrants illegally on their property, looking through their windows. They've seen dead bodies. Talk about that project to get those folks in custody.
So one thing that Governor Abbott has done, he has recognized the issues here on the southern border, and that is leadership right there. He has visited the border numerous times, not only in the Rio Grande Valley, but also in Del Rio. He has visited with law enforcement, local officials to see what the concerns are and come up with solutions. And because of that, he launched Operation Lone Star, which is a state initiative deploying over 1,000 DPS personnel to the southern border to combat these issues. In addition to that, he constructed a temporary border fencing here in Del Rio, which allows DPS personnel to arrest illegal immigrants, those that are avoiding apprehension, to arrest them for criminal trespass and put them in jail. So we're not doing catch and release, we're doing catch and jail. That's the initiative right now from Governor Abbott.
When you hear the politicians on the national level, like the president and vice president, say that this is closed, what goes through your head?
The numbers don't reflect that. And we saw that today. We saw that when you do not have laws in place that exist in the United States, it creates chaos. And we saw that this past week with approximately over 14,000 migrants that came across. It was chaos. And if it wasn't for our DPS troopers, this situation right now would have been catastrophic.
You know, all across the country, the morale of the police department is at an all-time low. But for Texas State Troopers, morale is at all-time high. Y'all just had your largest graduating class. Why is that? Why is it different in Texas?
The leadership that we have. We have support from the governor, lieutenant governor, and all the Texas legislators. That is key to success in any operation that we do. And that's what Governor Abbott has been doing. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. You have to come down and visit the areas where you see a surge of activity. That's what you got to do. You got to visit with the men and women that are holding the front lines and see what their concerns are. That is leadership. That is a perfect example of leadership, and that's why we've been so successful, and that's why morale for Texas DPS is at an all-time high.
Thanks so much, LT. As you guys know, as I continue to say, it is the Texas State Troopers that are holding the line, and that's part of the reason why the governor, lieutenant governor, is offering $10,000 with this new proposal for Border Patrol. If they want to come work for the state of Texas, they got a plan. I'm going to send it back to you guys in New York.
So let me just ask you real quick, Lawrence, what can't Border Patrol, what can't the Texas troops do that the Border Patrol can? What's stopping them from just taking over the border themselves?
Yeah, so the Texas State Troopers cannot enforce national immigration law. Right. They have the ability to get folks for criminal trespass, but they got to have the agreement from the landowners to do that. So that is the semantics game. Now, yesterday, y'all may have seen some of the footage when I was in the helicopter and the Texas State Troopers were here and people were attempting to cross over and they told them to just turn back around, and they did that. But the migrants that you just saw in the footage just a while ago, they had children with them. And so they knew that they could be protected and stay in the country because of Title 42 if they had those children.
There you go. All right.
Exactly. The loopholes that. Thank you, Lawrence.
It's always the loopholes.
Right. Kids with the loopholes.
Kids are the loopholes. And by the way, I know people who live in towns about 2 hours from Del Rio, and they say we're really glad that people are, that the law enforcement is surging onto the border thanks to what Governor Abbott's doing. But that's leaving our communities unprotected because, remember, Del Rio is just one spot.
I know.
They're coming from all over these other spots. It's like a balloon that you squeeze it and it just comes out the other side. So this is a massive problem. Again, that law enforcement saying, come to the border, Kamala and Joe Biden. Meanwhile, Pete Hegeseth, who's also hosting Fox News Primetime all this week, is joining us. He's also, by the way, the 2021 Fox and Friends Grill contest winner.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah,
that's fixed. I mean, you won 2 years ago with a hamburger.
He won this year with a ribeye, and he beat my lollipop lamb chops.
That sounds fantastic.
Anyway.
Brian, guys, I can't believe you haven't figured out. Don't throw curveballs and junk balls. Just throw fastballs when it comes to grilling. Cheeseburgers and steaks.
And
that's
I know
it.
your secret, Montreal steak seasoning, because that's how you roll.
On everything.
Yep. Hey, Pete, let's talk a little bit about what's going on the southern border. Joe Biden is in a real bind because, people from the political right are going, hey, why is he letting all these people in? And then now they're trying to say, oh, look, we're deporting everybody back. But they're not. Yesterday, 38 civil rights groups and immigration groups from the political left, for the most part, wrote a letter to the president and said, stop deporting people back to Haiti. You can't do that, Mr. President. So he's got it from the left and the right. He can't do anything right regarding this.
No, I mean, that's why he dislikes the Fox News coverage so much. That's why they tried to ground the drone, because the biggest problem for him on this is the visual to the American public who still believe in borders, who still believe in law enforcement, who thinks people should come here the right way. But who's winning out in that debate? The far left is winning out in that debate, because as we talk about what those amazing Border Patrol agents and Texas state troopers are doing, and they're doing an impossible job. What they are doing is not deporting people, and if they're sending them anywhere, they're sending them to Minneapolis, to Chicago, to New York, and across in the dead of night. And there was a great article exclusive in FoxNews.com yesterday that detailed this network called ICE Air. And ICE Air is used in the middle of the night through DHS, and there are air traffic controllers I've heard from who in the middle of the night see flight after flight after flight land of illegals landing in those communities, getting on a bus, and sent out into the communities. That is still happening. And so they talk about deportations to try to make it sound like things are happening. Right. They'll send Cessna planes with a couple dozen people on them, and even on those they can't control them, as you heard about the unfortunate revolt on one of them. But otherwise, the decision has been made. These people are allowed into the country, and maybe they'll show up for a hearing a year or two later. That is their policy. Make no mistake about it, that's their policy. And that picture you're putting up there right now of Bidenville, of that camp under the bridge, which should be called Bidenville, is the manifestation of their approach. That's a government holding facility. Imagine if that was under Donald Trump. It would be wall-to-wall, how much he hates black and brown people. Instead, they're hoping to get a pass, and soon these people will be throughout the United States.
They're focused on the way they deal with their horses and the length of the reins on the horse. That's what everybody else is focusing on, which is bizarre when you have 15,000 illegals underneath an arbitrary bridge in Texas and then are overrunning buses and planes transporting them. That should be the story in most newsrooms in the America that used to be.
But, Brian, they got to find the one piece of evidence that wasn't even true, because we know it's fake news, what they're talking about, the whipping of illegals at the border. They found the one piece of evidence that could try to make law enforcement look bad. Right. That try to say, oh, those are the old Trump policies. Those are Texas state troopers, therefore they must be Trumpsters, and they're beating those poor illegals, when A, it wasn't true, and B, the overarching reality at the border is that it's open. And so, of course, that's what they want us to talk about, ultimately not what's happening in the desert.
Trump was pro-horse law enforcement,
right,
too.
And even the Washington Post this morning is talking about how that story about the horse reins, nobody was abused, apparently, is the thrust of their story. They're just really long reins because they've got to control.
How else do you convince a horse to go into the water?
But, Pete, it is really interesting how quickly Ilhan Omar, AOC, they all jumped on this story, and everybody at MSNBC and CNN on, like, you know, somehow making this comparison to America's history of slavery.
Well, they're doing an
racism.
investigation.
I know, they're doing an investigation. Where were these compassionate people when it comes to, I haven't heard one word from them about the child sex trafficking that's coming across our border, about the children who are dying in the desert, that our Border Patrol rescue and sometimes find dead, or crying over their dead parents' bodies in the desert.
Well, that's not politically useful to them. So why would they talk about that? Or the 332 pregnant women under the bridge in Bidenville.
That's right.
Why is Comrade Cortez not there weeping like she did at the Donna facility about the tragedy, the humanitarian disaster that is that reality? Because it isn't politically advantageous. The 1 second a Texas state trooper gets aggressive, which you have to do at the border, and not whipping somebody, Chuck Schumer runs to the Senate floor and gives a speech. This is how these people operate.
Yeah, absolutely. Or AOC came to Texas, remember, when there was that outage, and she thought it would make Governor Abbott look bad to serve food. Well, where is she? She could be serving food right now under that bridge.
And Chuck Schumer is one of the people from the political left yesterday who said, you've got to stop deporting the Haitians, although the government won't give us the numbers.
Right.
Pete, congratulations once again on winning the weekend barbecue crown.
Thank you.
And catch Pete all this week on primetime. Excellent job. Excellent show last night.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
All right.
Very good.
Jillian, you have the other news.
Yes, I do. Good morning. So let's start with this. Famed New York City restaurant Carmine's releasing its own footage showing 3 women attacking a hostess after she asked for proof of vaccination. The 3 women charged in the assault say they were racially profiled and that the hostess used a racial slur. But a restaurant spokesperson denies those claims, saying the incident had nothing to do with race, and the video shows the attack was, quote, entirely unprovoked. Police in South Florida are on the hunt for the man they say stabbed an elderly man outside a strip mall. The attack happening at Random. Investigators describing it as, quote, senseless. The victim was on the clock picking up trash at the property in Miramar. Paramedics taking him to the hospital. The seriousness of his injuries are not clear. A Chinese whistleblower claims Beijing intentionally spread COVID at an athletic tournament in October of 2019. Defector Wei Jincheng says the military games could have been the first super spreader event before the world knew of the virus.
The possibility of the Chinese government using biological weapons, because I knew they were doing experiments of that sort.
To watch his compelling interview and others, and for more insight into what really happened in Wuhan, you can catch the documentary on Fox Nation. Okay, did you see this? MMA star Conor McGregor throws out the first pitch at last night's Chicago Cubs game, but doesn't really go so well. He lobbed the baseball very far wide of the mark. Some fans calling it the worst first pitch in history. Others saying it goes down in MLB history next to Dr. Anthony Fauci's lopsided first pitch and rapper 50 Cent, whose first pitch still lives on in MLB infamy 7 years later.
You know, I don't know if we have the footage, but Gary Delabate, who is the producer on Howard Stern show, also probably had the most dangerous pitch. I think he was hitting people in the stands.
Yeah,
I threw out a terrible first pitch at a Phillies game once.
We've all done it, and it's terrifying because you're in front of 25,000 people doing something
It's
you're not very
nerve-wracking.
good at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leave it to the professionals.
That's all. Anyway, that was embarrassing, that particular pitch. Right. All right, Jillian, thank you very much.
But he could beat up everybody in the stadium.
I was just going to say, you can be so strong and just not do well at throwing a
He could take his shirt off and just start fighting people. So I'm glad he didn't.
I don't think he has to take the shirt off to do that.
Oh, I didn't.
It's just be more fun to see.
Are you laughing at me up there?
Right, exactly.
Bad move.
Yeah, one by one, he'll beat up every Dodger fan.
Anyway, 7:20 now. On this Wednesday, a Houston police officer who spent more than 3 decades on the force is shot and killed by a career criminal. The police union says the judge who released the accused gunman needs to resign. We're going to have that story coming up next.
Plus, Congressman Brian Mast reacts to President Biden's UN speech. Have we really turned the page on Afghanistan? I know our show has not. We'll ask Brian if he has.
Years with the United States not at war. We've turned the page. All the unmatched strength, energy, and commitment, will, and resources of our nation are now fully and squarely focused on what's ahead of us, not what was behind.
Like 2 days ago when you killed 7 kids on a drone strike. Despite the chaos and failures during the withdrawal from Afghanistan, astoundingly, President Biden boasting to the UN General Assembly that America's ready to move on. Really? Retired Army Ranger and Florida Congressman Brian Mast served in Afghanistan as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. He joins us now to react. Congressman, your reaction to the president's speech. We're moving on? Really?
The president is absolutely delusional about us not being in a war. He's simply made the war far more dangerous than what it was before, lacking intelligence on the ground in places like Afghanistan, making it a more dangerous region, ignoring the fact that we're in the greatest financial war that we've ever seen with China, but never uttering a word about China in his 34-minute speech to the UN General Assembly. And the only thing that he really talked about when it came to border, where we're being invaded in our country right now, was calling the climate crisis a borderless crisis, and calling for reasons to let more people in, and thinking that giving away more U.S. dollars, funding those in South Central America, Haiti, other places, is actually going to stop that invitation to come across our border illegally. He's missing every single war that our nation is in right now.
Meanwhile, the Taliban is looking to put their own ambassador into the UN. They want to be recognized. And grab that chair. Amir Khan Muttaqi, his name was sent to the UN General Assembly, and they want him confirmed as a representative of the Taliban's Afghanistan. Should we do that?
No, we absolutely should not be recognizing the Taliban. Again, terrorist organization looking to lead their country by Sharia, jihadist law, not let women work, not let young girls go to school, kill anybody that they disagree with religiously or otherwise. As we speak right now, the Taliban is not just still hunting those Americans and those that worked with the U.S. in Afghanistan. They're actually sending out government forms, government Taliban forms, to say, hey, do you have any information on who somebody is, where they're hiding, when they worked with the United States of America, gathering intelligence to further their hunt for those that helped America.
So the Taliban 2.0 is a lot like Taliban. They have not changed at all. The women's ministry have been disbanded. The women have been told to go home and not go to school, and if they're going to go to school, it'll be separately. So, Congressman, were you astounded that we're now going to be a country that goes diplomacy first, not war first? What an insult to previous regimes that any American president wants to go to war first?
No, when you look at what this administration is doing and ignoring about the threats that we face, let's look at that in terms of Israel and what just happened last night, where we support a program known as Iron Dome that has knocked thousands, probably tens of thousands of rockets out of the sky over Israel, intended to indiscriminately kill civilians or anywhere else. Democrats pulled that program out of funding. Why? Because they fundamentally believe in supporting the terrorist Hamas through a two-state solution that would become a country welcome to the UN, just like the Taliban are being welcomed to the UN right now, creating another place in the Middle East where we're going to have to go out there and probably send service members to war at some point, because they're creating another terrorist country. Layer that on top of Iran, layer that on top of China, Russia, and now what's going on in the Taliban. They are making the most powder keg situation that we've ever seen throughout the Middle East.
And lastly, how about sneaking this into your speech? Never again will a country unleash a worldwide pandemic on the world and refuse an investigation into how it started and deny where it emanated and the origins of it. How about sneaking that in, where almost 700,000 Americans died because of the irresponsibility of the Cold War? We don't want to start with a nation he won't mention.
Yeah, well, we know that President Biden is intimidated every day that he sits in office. He was intimidated every step along the way of that withdrawal in Afghanistan, leaving our embassy, leaving Bagram, leaving on the Taliban's timeline. We also know that he's entirely intimidated by China, refusing to mention them at all by name, to call out their specific atrocities, everything related to COVID. Intimidation is the key factor in what's driving every single decision for President Biden. And we all know that we seek peace through strength. That's how Americans operate. We won't have peace because we don't have strength, and that's the fact.
We alienated our allies. We embarrassed ourselves on the world stage, and he goes on the world stage, gives a speech he should be embarrassed about, and refuses to take questions from any press. Congressman can continue to not forget about Afghanistan. We have thousands of allies and Americans still behind enemy lines. Thanks so much.
All the best, Brian.
You got it. Still ahead, country music star John Rich joins the Fox business family with a brand new show focused on achieving the American dream. It's already had great success on Fox Nation. He's got a preview of The Pursuit. And this is a Kentucky Fried crackdown, why men were put in handcuffs for trying to smuggle some KFC. Finally.